But then I got so angry at all these people, I wasn't going to have them as my bad guy. So it ended up that there I was, not touching money, and I had no support system anymore. And the temple was 9 miles from where we were living. And it was over mountains and so on. So this morning I was furious, and I walked to the temple by this back mountainous route. And by the time I got there around 11 in the morning, everybody had been there for hours, having a wonderful time with Maharaji, and they were all eating. And I came in, and of course, the anger was exacerbated considerably by the fact that I had to walk 9 miles. And I walked in, and one of the fellas picked up a leaf plate of food and said, here, Ramdas. See, they couldn't decide. They couldn't quite take my anger seriously. They were trying to decide whether to throw me in the lake or what to do about my anger, because I was just sort of a drag from everybody. And I was so angry that I took the plate of food and I threw it at the guy. Maharaji was sitting across the courtyard. Ramdas. So I went over and I knelt down by him and I looked at him and he said, yeah, what's happening? I said, Maharaji, I can't stand those people. I can't stand adharma. I can't stand that which takes people away from God. I can't stand it in them. I can't stand it in me. I hate everybody but you. And I started to cry. I mean, wail. It was like the release. This anger had been building for weeks. I didn't even know where it came from. I mean, I suspected it, but I didn't know. But I was furious, and this crying, and he said, he started to cry, and he said for milk, and he was feeding me milk, and pulling my beard, and patting me on the head. And after I quieted down, he came up to me, like nose to nose, and he said, I told you to love everyone. I said, but you told me to tell the truth. Well, the truth is I don't love everyone. And he came up close and he looked at me and he said, love everyone and tell the truth. And at that moment, I saw my predicament very clearly. That he was saying, when you finish being who you think you are, who is someone who, the truth is they don't love everyone, this is who you're going to become. I'm just showing you who you'll be. You will be somebody who loves everyone, and that's the truth. Because you will give up everything that doesn't make it, because that's the way you're going to be in the spirit. And if you don't need it, let it go. What are you holding on to? And it was like I saw a casket in front of me that was shaped oddly, not for who I thought I was, but who I would be. It was like I could feel the metamorphosis right at that second. And I looked across and I looked at this group of people I hated. And I saw that with one flick, I saw love, and I was totally in love with all of them. But then what I was stuck with was my pride. And between them and me was this mountain of pride. I mean, when you've had righteous reasons to be angry at people. But my guru said, let it go. If you don't want a guru, don't take it. But if you're going to take a guru, you do what he says. So what do I do? Shall I work it out with everybody? That's the face-saving way to do it. Let's sit down and talk about it. Now, you were a little wrong, and I was a little wrong, and right, and yeah, so we really like each other, and we started working it out. He didn't say that. I mean, he just said, let it go. Just let it go. So I cut up an apple. Then he sent me across the courtyard to sit down. He called everybody over, and he says, Ramdas, great person, go touch his feet. So they all came and touched my feet, which made me hate everybody all the more. I saw the predicament, and I cut up an apple into a lot of, a set of apples into a lot of little pieces, and I took each apple up to each person to feed them a piece of apple, because I know in my heart that if you feed somebody with anger in your heart, it's like giving them poison. piece of apple and I would hold it and I'd look into their eyes until I could see their soul, which I love, because when you're looking at a soul, you're looking at purity and light and love itself. How could you not be in love with love? I mean, that's the thing that draws you. So I would then put the apple, and it took me about an hour and a half to go through the whole group. And that lesson was so powerful in my life. And then he said to me, you give up a little anger each day and I'll help you. And I can tell you that in the 10 years since that's happened, the 8 years, my anger has been going and going and going and going because it's not going to get me to God. So it has no function. And I don't work it out. I don't analyze it. The minute I notice it, I just let it go. It's just not going to get me. It's not functional. And anything that's not functional, I don't want to have around. I just want to get on with it. You know, I'm telling you, very fierce teaching and the way I hear the teaching and what I have to do about it. Because all those personality qualities which reinforce your separateness, if you invest in that reality, you're going to live with it. That's why when people say, well, should I go into psychotherapy? I say, as long as the therapist knows that we're all one. The therapist is Christ or Buddha. I say yes. Otherwise, be careful. Because if the therapist thinks they're a therapist, and you're in the room with them, there's only room for one other person, and that's a patient. And you're not a patient. You are a living spirit that has taken form on earth in order to do certain work. That's what you're doing here. That's what I'm doing here. That's who I know you to be. So that I don't take your work, I don't identify you with your blue sweater or your yellow sweater. I don't identify you with your body or with your personality or with your astrology. I honor that that's the form for which you're manifesting. I take care of it properly, and I respect it, but I don't confuse you with that. And the reason I am attracted to speaking to the community of the spirit is because this community knows that. And even though we meet as all these separate bodies, and there is speaker, and there is listener, and there's all the minds and all that stuff, behind it all, we all know what we're doing here, and that we are here. And we realize that this game itself is just another form. There's nothing I can say to you you don't know. My words are not what it's about. They're merely to keep your minds quiet, and mine too, so that we can be together. This is merely an opportunity for us to share being. Because that's what the community of the spirit does. It shares being. It's not knowledge, it's being. Because out of being comes wisdom. The difference between wisdom and knowledge. I'll do one tiny more thing and then stop. And then if you wanted to ask questions or leave or whatever. In the term love, I was a psychologist, professor of psychology at one time at Harvard. And I studied a great deal about imprinting behavior in animals. And you know, probably most of you know by now, that there are certain patterns that if you show them to a baby gosling, it'll approach and open its mouth. And if you show it the pattern a different way, it'll run away and hide. And it's built into the mechanism. It's instinctively built in. When you and I, in our incarnations, in our bodies here on Earth, we are complex packages of mechanisms of this nature, very subtle mechanisms, chemical, biochemical, psychological, the way we work. And so now then we meet somebody and we, quote, fall in love. Another way of saying that within this framework I was just mentioning is that that person is the key stimulus. That person is the key that allows you to touch the place in yourself where you are loved. When you say, I fell in love with her or with him, it means she or he is my connection to the place in myself where I am love. And when I am in love, the whole world looks different. Because love is a plane of consciousness. So that your beloved becomes your vehicle for tuning, for shifting channels. Do you hear what I'm saying? So when two people, and if you want to make it sound, if you want to run the crudity of it through, it's just like a junkie with their connection. And you get hooked on your connection, and you're very worried about what's going to happen to your connection. You want to make sure where they are and that you've got their telephone number. And it's the same way you feel towards somebody you're in love with. You want to possess them, and one of the things that strangles with love relationships is that possessive quality of wanting to possess your connection. Because you don't know how to get to that place by yourself. And that's your vehicle for getting there. And when two people are in love with each other, they are both connections to help each other get into the place of love. And then they meet here in love. Now, what happens is that through spiritual practices, through tuning, through quieting the mind and opening the heart, through just tuning and tuning and tuning, you start to dwell, be able to flick through practice, your consciousness and your heart, until you come into the space of love. And then an interesting thing happens, and if you watch some of the social phenomena that have occurred in the recent years, you'll see that this is an interesting one. That as that happens, you start to experience love towards more and more people. And you learn how to live in a world of lovers. And now we come back to something that you and I also share, besides just the fact that we are spiritual, sharing a spiritual journey in life. And that is that for us, because you are connected with Christ, and I also with Christ, and also with my guru, and also with other forms, our paths are devotional in nature. And that means our paths are through our hearts. And there are a variety of ways in which the heart path works. In Hinduism, they spell them out. There is the relationship between mother and child, for example, between Mary and Jesus. There is the relationship of friends, like between John and Jesus. There is the relationship of disciple to master. There is the relationship of servant to master. There is the relationship of father and child. There is the relationship of lover and beloved. Now, ultimately, you will find that because of your unique set of patternings, one of those forms will feel most attractive to you, devotion. You will explore them all, but one of them will feel most attractive. But as you get further into it, what I find is that all those ways become my way. And that I get so that everywhere I look, I see my beloved. I don't see the form as a historical form or as a special form. It's as if this is all God. And every one of you is my guru, come in drag to catch me. You're coming to say, I'll catch you. You'll think I'm somebody else. You won't see that I'm God too. The quality of my guru was that he was nobody special. Just another being. There was nobody there. There was just, every time you looked, you just fell in love. And my path is very simple, and it's your path. My path is the path of service and of love. Service because there's nothing else I can do. And love because it is such an absolutely royal road through. It's so much easier than the way of beyond, the way of knowledge. All you have to do is love. Lawrence kept saying to me, you don't have to change anybody, you just have to love them. When you go around changing people, you forgot perfection. Finally, what you become, or in the process you become an environment, a vibratory rate. Your life is your message. You dwell in love, and everybody that meets you, just by your presence, has an opportunity to come into love. That's all. You don't lay a trip. You don't proselytize. You don't prove. You give people plenty of space. I won't lay a trip on you. I am what I am. If you don't come on, you're right there. A child will hear it. The hardest person will hear it. I teach in prisons, and I go in and I'm met with paranoia. And all I have to be is straight and just remember, this is my beloved. I don't have to remember, I just have to look. I have to look beyond the mind projections that they're sending out. They're sending out, this is who I am. I'm a mean, watch it, you better watch it, I know who you are, you know. That's their mind net. And their mind net is right there, and right beyond the net is the beloved. Now, it gets scary when you really understand that you're in love with the universe, because love is love. It's got all of it connected with it. It's very open. It's very flowing. It doesn't do well with rules. It doesn't do well with rules. I remember once I was in an ashram in India, and I was, the head of the ashram said to me, Ramdas, get up and dance. Because I was known because I would ecstatically dance. But ecstatically dance in command is a whole other matter. When I got up, because he was the head of the ashram, and he was a very fine man, and he's here in Oakland, Swaimuktanan. And I got up and I started to dance, and I got more and more ecstatic, and in my ecstasy, I crossed over the line in the middle of the hall between the men's part and the women's part. Because ecstasy, ecstasy's ecstasy. And immediately he stopped the music and everything, and the whole thing was over. Because ecstasy has no place in an ashram. And that's one of your predicaments, that when you really fall in love, it just opens and opens and opens, and you just don't know where to hold on anymore. And then you've got to have a lot of trust, a lot of faith, a lot of faith.
This podcast is brought to you by the Love Serve Remember Foundation and Ramdas.org. We appreciate you listening, and we appreciate all the support that you've given us. Please continue that support and donate at Ramdas.org. We can then continue to share what Ramdas has been sharing for all of these years. Thank you.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you tend to compare your life to other people? It's hard not to with how prevalent social media is these days. But comparison is the thief of joy, and it's easy to envy other people's lives. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can start living your best life. It's a great way to alter negative thought patterns, increase self-esteem, and more. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/Ramdas today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Ramdas.
Hello and welcome. This is the Astrology of the Week Ahead podcast. I'm your host, Chani Nicholas. This week's episode, we're talking about the astrology of the week of July 8th. In this podcast, we look at the astrology of the upcoming week and how it will be landing for all of us collectively. For a more personalized reading that dives into the ways that this week's astrology will play out for you, download the Chani app. I gotta say, this week has a lot of relationship stuff in it. It's like ending with a little bit of a bang, I would say, but it's not like massive life-defining astrology or even defining for 2024 or even this season. However, on Monday, July 15th, there is a piece of astrology that is quite disruptive, lively. It's a little bit of a red flag. I'm lying. It's a red flag piece of astrology. So I just want to say that we're going to be feeling that now. It's like feeling the ripples of something coming. It's feeling the disturbance of something coming. There's something on its way. And I don't mean that that's going to be bad for you individually. I don't mean it's even going to be bad. It's just loud, and I don't know what way it's going to be loud. It's going to be disruptive. I don't know what it's going to disrupt. There's a lot that needs to be disrupted in our world right now, so this could be some signature. This could be a moment of time that has a quality within it that is really good for disrupting something that isn't really good. So I want us to think about it in a stretchy kind of way. I don't want us to be so focused on what we fear. I say that all the time, every time I bring up something that looks like a loud, challenging, disruptive, whatever moment. But I think it's worth saying because what gets attention in the algorithms that we're all very connected to is anything that is controversial and also anything that's upsetting. And when there's a signature, astrologically speaking, of something that does look upsetting, then there's ways in which we might take that and run with it. But I want us to think about what it is that's good to upset. It's good to flip a table if everything that's happening at that table is about injustice and is about harm and is about everything that we know needs to change. So on July 15th, I'm way ahead now, I haven't even talked about the astrology this week, but just bear this in mind because I want it to be the backdrop of everything right now. On July 15th, Mars, the planet of aggression and sometimes war, and also of courage and valor and energy and breaking through whatever barrier it comes up against, that planet is making a conjunction that's sitting in the same spot as the planet Uranus. And Uranus is a planet of change. It's a planet of surprises. It's the planet of things being unconventional, out of the blue, and there can be a feeling of like an earthquake or a disruption. Uranus and Mars, I would say, but depending on the sign, Uranus is very loud. It is chaotic because it is about a breakthrough. You don't usually break through something without some part of that being loud, right? There's not usually a big change without something breaking. And so breakdowns, breakthroughs, breaking open, breaking away from, breaking with tradition is all about what Uranus does, or Uranus is all about it. And when you mix Mars with it, a planet that is harsh sometimes, and a planet that does its own kind of disruption because it's like a sword, right? So it slices through something, it breaks the fabric of something. So these two, do a lot together. They get loud together. They are not polite or respectful of status quo, which again can be good, or boundaries, which obviously could be bad, and of anything that is overly traditional. Okay, so again, that's happening on the world stage. It might happen in your personal life. It might be something that you're feeling like, oh, there's a change, there's a need for something. But again, it might just be something that happens outside here. And of course, the outside impacts us, but it's different than when it happens personally. So we're looking at, disruptive things happening out in the world around July 15th, which, falls on this weekend, or that energy will be felt this weekend, I think. We'll see. Okay, sticking to just this week now, however. On Monday the 8th, we have Venus making a sextile to Uranus, which is about finding delights and pleasures in a whole new way. Let's get experimental about how we connect with others, about how we enjoy ourselves, about how we do things that are fun. Also on that day, Mercury makes a sextile to Jupiter. I love Monday. Monday has just a lot of positive signals and signs and energy to it, and it's a really good day to communicate, to send out your emails, to have the conversation, to have the meeting, right? We want to think about what's good for our relationships and how we can get across sentiments of optimism and expansion and choice and abundance even. And then Wednesday, the Sun makes a trine to Saturn, which is a really good signature for our own leadership. The Sun is a planet that talks about how we shine, and it talks about how we lead, and it talks about how we, demonstrate, or how we are able to pronounce ourselves in some way, shape, or form. And Saturn is about what gives us stability and what can also act like a ground underneath us. So Wednesday is a really nice moment for kind of grounding into our own leadership in our lives. On Thursday, Venus makes a trine with Neptune, which is very romantic, very lovey-dovey, very good for escaping into whatever it is that is pleasurable and delightful for us. It's a really good moment for our own creativity as well. And then it moves into Leo. And things are changing now. We're hitting a different area of July. So Mercury's already in Leo, and now Venus is going to enter Leo. And while Leo's not a major hotspot for the summer, it is sitting in a square. It's a sign that sits in a square with Taurus. And right now, Mars and Uranus are in Taurus. They're about to make that conjunction. And Venus rules that whole situation, right? Venus rules Taurus. So Venus is in charge of Mars and Uranus right now, as soon as it, all the time, but as soon as it moves into Leo, it also makes an opposition with Pluto. So follow this. The two planets that are super disruptive and that are sitting together in Taurus are governed by Venus. And up until it enters Leo, it's better. It's like, okay, this is working. Things are still working in some way. And then as soon as Venus enters Leo, it makes an opposition with Pluto, which evokes something deeply held, emotionally speaking. It brings up a lot of relationship issues. It asks us to go really deep and to hold space for something that is also quite cathartic or transformative or alchemical, if you will, which is great. And because the planet that's ruling this difficult combo is all of a sudden in a difficult situation, it does feel like the weekend is going to be a little extra complicated. Again, that might not be for you personally, so don't sweat it. And if this is falling in your personal life, it's going to feel like you need to make a change. It's going to feel like you need to get real. It's going to feel like you don't want small talk right now. You want to go deep into the lessons of love and connection that you need to get into. It's going to feel like my relationship dynamics are going through some kind of major transformation. And that transformation is going to lead to a breakthrough. Or at least I hope that that's how it feels. And if stuff feels like it's breaking or falling apart, or kind of molting in a way, like there's something happening that you're like, what is going on with everyone or with this situation in my life? Know that we're in a bumpy corner, right? And we're gonna feel it all week, but especially I think as soon as Thursday, as soon as Venus moves in to Leo. And the thing about Venus in Leo is that anything in Leo is gonna be really performative. It's gonna be obvious. It's gonna be dramatique. And so Venus is about matters of the heart and about justice and about beauty. And so all of those things get louder when Venus is in Leo. And as it makes an opposition to Pluto, it's not going to do it quietly. So it's not going to go into the underworld and do this subterranean digging up how I really feel about the situation quietly. It's going to be obvious in our life. And when things are obvious in our life, we get to make choices about it. When things are not obvious, when they're hidden from view, when we aren't sure about them, it's harder to know what to do. So the loudness of both Venus and Leo, and the loudness of Mars and Uranus hanging out together, and Venus and Leo ruling the Mars and Uranus, means that we're going to get the info, we're going to experience something in our face, if we're going to experience it. Again, you gotta remember, some of this stuff is not gonna land in your life very intensely. If you're Taurus rising, or Leo rising, or Scorpio rising, or Aquarius rising, you're more than likely to feel it a little bit more, because the fixed signs, the signs I just mentioned, these situations are going to be happening in what we call angular houses of your chart. And so those rising signs are going to have this astrology more prominently featured, more active, we could say, in your life. So those rising signs might notice it. They might notice this desire for change. They might notice a desire for a deepening in a relationship, or something that gets revealed within relationship dynamics that is very, very important. I do think that a Venus opposing Pluto has the power to show you what you've refused to see about a relationship thus far. It's a peeling back of a layer. And, Venus goes through this really lovey-dovey romantic thing as it trines Neptune on Thursday. And then all of a sudden, everything changes and it's opposing Pluto, and the delusions are cleared, the illusions are swept away, the cobwebs are released from our eyes, or the soft lighting disappears, and the lights get turned on, and it's a little bit of a harsh lighting situation, but it's, again, good to know the reality of a sitch. So this could be in any area of your life. It doesn't mean that it's about even another person. Go listen to your reading. In the Channy app, we go into great detail about it. And also, I want you to know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, some of Thursday, really lovely little pockets of astrology to work with. Very helpful, very bountiful even, and quite stabilizing, which we need, because whatever's going to happen over the course of this weekend and into next Monday, Tuesday, and into the rest of next week is important. Mars making a conjunction with Uranus, it happens every couple years-ish, and it's not decade-defining astrology. But when it happens within a year, you want to circle it. We circle it on the calendar. We're like, okay, that's a thing to look out for. And again, it's not always just on that day, or it's not only on that day, or it's not only just that day. It's what happens before it and after it as well. So this is just that little corner of July that you're like, okay, let's plan for the unexpected, and also let's plan to make our own breakthroughs happen. I do think that this might comment on divestment in some way, shape, or form, because it's happening in Taurus. So I'll also be looking to the world stage about, issues with the economy, money, but like how we're invested, who we're invested in, and movements for divesting. Thank you so much for taking the time to leave reviews in the App Store for our app. It makes a massive difference for us, both personally and in terms of spreading the word about the app. I don't know about you, but I read reviews all the time, so they make a difference for me as a person, and I know that they make a difference for us as a company. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I wanted to leave you with this one called Meaningful. I'm so appreciative of the knowledge and wisdom shared in this app. It's become my quiet morning ritual with coffee, a personal roadmap to understanding some of the biggest mysteries of my life through the fascinating lens of astrology. The language and writing is beautiful and eloquent, and the artwork is a treat. The creativity and the care that flow out from this app make me feel special and supported. And I love the notifications that give me a chance to take a pause and reflect about what's happening in the sky and the meaning. Thank you. All right, Shell. Come back next week and we'll talk more about it. But there's also a full moon next week. So the Mars-Uranus conjunction happens on Monday. And then we've got a full moon in Capricorn on Sunday. And it's the second full moon that's happening in Capricorn in a row. And it's also conjunct Pluto. So these themes of change and alchemy run pretty deep this week and next. I'm sending you lots of love, many, many, many blessings. Bye for now.
On Being with Krista Tippett is supported in part by the Fetzer Institute, helping build the spiritual foundation for a loving world. Fetzer's Sharing Spiritual Heritage Report asks, how will we hold on to ancient wisdom traditions while applying them creatively in today's time? Learn more at fetzer.org.
Beauty isn't all about just nice loveliness, right? Beauty is about more rounded, substantial becoming. So I think beauty in that sense is about an emerging fullness, a greater sense of grace and elegance, a deeper sense of depth, and also a kind of homecoming for the enriched memory of your unfolding life.
No conversation I've ever had has been more beloved than this one with the Irish poet and philosopher John O'Donoghue. He insisted on beauty as a human calling. He had a very Celtic, lifelong fascination with the inner human landscape and what he called the invisible world constantly intertwining with what we can know and see. This was one of the last interviews he gave before his unexpected death in 2008. But John O'Donoghue's voice and writings continued to bring ancient mystical wisdom to modern confusions and longings. I'm Krista Tippett, and this is On Being. Anamkara was published in 1997 and it became an international bestseller. John O'Donoghue's final work was To Bless the Space Between Us, published posthumously. He was born in 1956 in County Clare in Western Ireland. Historically, this part of the world was a crucible of Celtic Christianity, merging a strong sense of mystery with a passionate embrace of nature, the body, and the senses. The divine is understood as manifest everywhere in everything. John O'Donoghue entered seminary at a young age and was a Catholic priest for 19 years. But in the 1980s, he went to Germany to study the philosophy of Hegel. He eventually left the priesthood and devoted himself full-time to meditating and writing about beauty and friendship and how the visible and the invisible, the material and the spiritual intertwine in human experience. Tell me a little bit more about where you come from and what formed you, began to form you to come to this spiritual perspective and philosophical and poetic perspective that you have now.
Well, I suppose I was blessed by being born into an amazing landscape in the Western Ireland.
Yes.
And it's the Barn region, which is limestone. And it's a bare limestone landscape. And I often think that the forms of the limestone are so abstract and aesthetic. And it is as if they were all laid down by some wild, surrealistic kind of deity. So soon, being a child and coming out into that, it was waiting like a huge, wild invitation to extend your imagination. And then it's right on the edge of the ocean as well, so a conversation, an ancient conversation between the ocean and the stone going on.
I know that landscape is a really pivotal word for you that you use, not just in describing the natural world, but an important word in talking about how human beings know themselves and move through the world. I haven't been to precisely the place you're from, but I think the west coast of Scotland, the west coast of Ireland is this completely unusual, this wild, raw, bleak beauty. But talk to me about how you have come to understand landscape as something that forms each of us.
Well, I think it makes a huge difference when you wake in the morning and come out of your house. Whether you believe you're walking into dead geographical location, which is used to get to a destination, or whether you're emerging out into a landscape that is just as much, if not more, alive as you, but in a totally different form. And if you go towards it with an open heart and a real watchful reverence, that you will be absolutely amazed at what it will reveal to you. And I think that was one of the recognitions of the Celtic imagination, that landscape wasn't just matter, but that it was actually alive. What amazes me about landscape recalls you into a mindful mode of stillness, solitude and silence, where you can truly receive time.
Are you just talking though about landscape as the natural world around us? I'll tell you, I remember a summer I spent a few years after I had first gone to this beautiful, raw, wild edge of Scotland, and I was working with children in a very impoverished inner city neighborhood. And I would often wish that I could just transport them, for an hour, so that what they saw when they opened their eyes and looked around them was that kind of beauty that opened so much possibility. So I wonder how this Celtic sensibility would also speak to people who don't have that kind of beauty at hand, that kind of beauty.
Yeah, I do agree with you that an awful lot of urban planning, particularly in poor areas, has doubly impoverished the poor by the ugliness which surrounds them. And it's understandable that it's so difficult to reach and sustain gentleness there. And I do think, like a friend of mine just in the last week who was absolutely exhausted in London, just came away down to southern England and spent a week by the slow ocean, and she's totally recovered. Come back to herself. Yes. But I do think, though, that it's not just a matter of the outer presence of the landscape. I mean, the dawn goes up and the twilight comes even in the most roughest inner city place. And I think that connecting to the elemental can be a way of coming into rhythm with the universe. And I do think that there is a way in which the outer presence, even through memory or imagination, can be brought inward as a sustaining thing. I mean, I think that, and it's the question of beauty, you're asking essentially, as we're speaking, that there are individuals holding out on front lines, holding the humane tissue alive in areas of ultimate barbarity, where things are visible that human eye should never see, and they're able to sustain it because there is in them some kind of sense of beauty that knows the horizon that we're really called to in some way. I love Pascal's phrase, that you should always keep something beautiful in your mind. And I've often, like in times when it's been really difficult for me, if you can keep some kind of little contour that you can glimpse sideways every now and again, you can endure great bleakness.
I've been looking back at the thought of the theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, and he has this statement at the beginning of his book, The Nature and Destiny of Man. The first line, man is his own most vexing problem. Or I think of a great kind of pivotal work in this culture of modern psychology, and Scott Peck's book, which begins, Life is Difficult. And then I read this line, which begins your book on Ankara, which is also a different way of kind of analyzing the human condition. It's strange to be here. The mystery never leaves you. Talk to me about that as a way of thinking about what it means to be human, and how you come to that, and what you mean when you You're right.
Okay.
Those words.
I mean, when you think about language and you think about consciousness, it's just incredible to think that we can make any sounds that can reach over across to each other at all. Because I mean, I think the beauty of being human is that we're incredibly intimately near each other. We know about each other, but yet we do not know or never can know what it's like inside another person. And it's amazing, you know. Here am I sitting in front of you now, looking at your face, you're looking at mine, and yet neither of us have ever seen our own faces. That in some way, thought is the face that we put on the meaning that we feel and that we struggle with, and that the world is always larger and more intense and stranger than our best thought will ever reach. And that's the mystery of poetry, you know, is poetry tries to draw alongside the mystery as it's emerging and somehow bring it into presence and into birth.
What do you mean when you write that everyone's an artist?
I mean that everyone is involved, whether they like it or not, in the construction of the world. So it's never as given as it actually looks. You're always shaping it and building it. And I feel that from that perspective that each of us is an artist. Second, I believe that everyone has imagination. That no matter how mature and adult and sophisticated a person might seem, that person is still essentially an ex-baby. And as children, we all lived in an imaginal world. You know, when you'd be told, don't cross that wall because there's monsters over there. My God, the world you were creating the other side of the wall. You know, and like when you'd ask questions like, why is the sky blue, or where does God live, or, you know, all this kind of stuff. Like, one of the first times I went to America, I said to my little niece who was 7, I said, what will I bring from America? She said, and her father said, no, ask him, or you won't get anything. And Katie turned to me and said, what's in it? Which I thought was a great question about America. So that childlike thing. And secondly, like that, every night when we sleep, we dream. And a dream is a sophisticated, imaginative text full of figures and drama that we send to ourselves. So I believe that deep in the heart of each of us, there's this imaginal capacity that we have, so that we're all doing.
And as I read you, I think what you're also saying is that just the act of living, of creating our lives, of growing, moving forward in time, is a creative act.
Absolutely, it is creative act.
It is a work of art.
That's right.
To elevate, to ennoble, to give ennobling words to something we're doing.
That's right. Because the amazing thing about us, I mean, we're so strange, you know, and we lose sight actually of how strange we are. And I'm always amazed that you never meet a human. You meet humans looking for all kinds of things, and you never meet a human and you say to them, what are you looking for? They say, I'm looking for yesterday. Where did yesterday go to? We just take it that it goes into nothingness. And that's on one side. The other thing, of course, is that we've no idea what will land on the shoreline of morning tomorrow. So that we're always actively involved in receiving and shaping, you know.
You wrote about time. Possibility is the secret heart of time. On its outer surface, time is vulnerable to transience. In its deeper heart, time is transfiguration. I wonder how you are able to have, I don't know, I think a larger sense of time because of, as inheritor of the Celtic tradition.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of it, you know, that old Celtic thing, because I mean, there is, in Ireland, like still, even though it's getting consumerized so fast, there is still in the West of Ireland where I live a sense of time, you know, that there's time for things.
Right.
And that when God made time, and plenty and all the rest of it. And you see, I think that one of the huge difficulties in modern life is the way time has become the enemy.
Time is a bully. We're captive to it.
Totally. And I'd say 7 out of every 10 people that turn up in a doctor's surgery are suffering from something stress related. Now there are big psychological terms about stress, but for me philosophically stress is a perverted relationship to time. So that rather than being a subject of your own time, you have become its target and victim, and time has become routine. So at the end of the day, you probably haven't had a true moment for yourself. And you know,
But once you're sitting comfortably, just take a moment or two to settle the body. But beginning the exercise with the eyes open, looking forward, not staring at one particular point, but just aware of the space around you. And just maintaining that very soft gaze or focus. Just take a couple of nice big deep breaths, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. Remember, as you breathe in through the nose, the focus is on the chest expanding, the lungs filling with air. And as you breathe out, just noticing how the muscles in the body soften with each exhalation. And with the next out breath, just gently closing the eyes, just allowing the breath to return to its natural rhythm, in and out through the nose. And just feeling the weight of the body, becoming more aware of the contact between the body and the chair, the floor beneath you. Perhaps a sensation of the soles of the feet, or the knees on the floor. Just a feeling of the weight of the hands and the arms just resting on the legs. At the same time, just starting to notice a bit more about the space around you, starting to notice any sounds, those very close, but also those a little bit further away as well. Now just gently bringing the attention back to the body and just checking in to notice how the body feels right now. Just getting a general sense to begin with, whether there's a feeling of heaviness or lightness in the body, sense of stillness or restlessness. In your own time, starting at the top of the head, just gently scanning down through the body, from head to toe, just starting to become more aware of which parts of the body feel comfortable, relaxed, and which parts might be holding a little bit of tension or tightness. Remember, not trying to change anything, just building up a picture of how the body feels. If the mind wanders off at any stage, just gently bringing it back to those physical sensations as you scan down towards the toes. And as you scan down, just starting to become more aware of the underlying mood, the emotional quality of mind. Basically just noticing if there are any strong emotions around right now. And at the same time starting to become more familiar with the rhythm and the feeling of the breath in the body. As the body breathes, it creates a rising and falling sensation. Feel it in the stomach, chest, and the diaphragm. Wherever it is, just starting to become more aware of that rising and falling sensation. And if you find that it helps, you can just silently count the breaths as they pass. So 1 with the rise, 2 with the fall. Just up to a count of 10. When you get to 10, you can stop and start again at 1. You just try that a couple of times through now. Each time you realize that the mind's wandered off, no problem, just gently bringing the attention back again. That physical sensation, the rising, falling sensation of the breath. Just for a moment now, let go of any focus at all. So you don't even have to focus on the breath now. Just for 10 seconds or so. Just let the mind do whatever it wants to do. If it wants to think, let it think. No effort, no control. Just let the mind do whatever it wants to do. Back to the body, back to those physical sensations, the contact in the body, in the chair, feet on the floor, the hands and the arms and the legs. As you just start to notice the sounds around you. Beginning the exercise with the eyes open, looking forward, not staring at one particular point, but just